Hello and welcome to this tutorial in Pygame. Today we'll be getting started with setting up our window and checking for events within a game loop, and finally coding our program to quit when the X is clicked at the top right hand side of the window. So to get started, the first thing we have to do is import the modules that we're going to use within our game. So to start with, have import pygame. That will import a library of code which we can then use later on to do certain things within the game. Now I'm also importing random here. This will allow us later on to generate random positions for example, an enemy player. We're not going to use it in this tutorial, but we may as well pop it in there so it's ready for the following tutorials. Your next step is to initialize all of the pygame modules that you're loading in with this line of code. Next two lines of code, we're just literally setting up a variable to hold the display width and the display height. You don't have to do this, you can sort of statically code in the physical numbers here, but if you decide later on you want to change the size of your window, you just have to change it in two places rather than potentially many places in your code, so it's just good coding practice to do this. Now the next thing here, I'm actually having to define colors by their RGB value, as Pygame doesn't have built-in colors, so you actually have to define them yourself. Now RGB stands for red, green and blue, if you're not familiar with the term. So if we have no red, no green and no blue, then we've got black. If you've got 255 of each value, it gives you pure white. And then, you know, to get red, you just have 255, 0 and 0, that gives you absolutely pure red. If you want pure green, you can have 0 here, 255 here, 0 there, and no prizes for guessing how to get blue. Now next up, we actually set up the game display size. So this is the line of code you need to do it, and we put in here the two variables that we declared earlier, so that will give us, you know, a width of 600 and a height of 400, and we just store that in a variable so we can use that all the way through the game. Next line, this isn't essential, but it does make the game look better. You just put a title on the window that we create. This bit is absolutely vital. You have to call the clock function to get a timer basically. Now we'll use this to set the frames per second of the game, so that will come in very, very useful in the next couple of tutorials. Now the next thing, we're going to use a Boolean value. Now a Boolean value can either be true or false, and that makes it ideal for a game loop, because it's either true that the game loop is running, you know, you're playing the game, or it's false in that, you know, you've ended the game. So it's perfect to control the main game loop. So we start off by entering into the while loop, because game start is true. That means we will enter this loop here. And then inside the while loop, we have a for loop. Now what this is going to do, it's going to be monitoring the window whilst it's open and checking for any events happening within the main window. So it will actually check, you know, the mouse position, it will check if there's any clicks left or right, key presses, so on and so on. Now we'll remove this later, but just to show you this in action, we're going to print the events so you can see what happens and, you know, how Pygame's actually monitoring the window. Now last couple of things for this tutorial. You can't quit Pygame without actually physically programming it. So to actually be able to quit the game, you have to check for an event within the window. So if event time is equal to the quit button being pressed, which is the X at the top right of the screen, all you have to do to quit this loop is set the variable game start to be false. That means the while loop will stop running, the code will come to here, Pygame will be quit, and then finally the program, the Python, will quit as well. So that's the start of it. Let's just show you that running. And if I bring this over here, now watch as I move my mouse. You can see here the positions for the mouse. If I click, there you go, you can just see down there, mouse button up. If I right click, again it detects it. I can press a keyboard button and it's detected it. So that is how Pygame will actually detect what's going on the screen. And because I've also coded this to actually accept it to be quit, I can click on X and it will close my program down. So that's it for the first tutorial. get your game up and running as I've shown, and then move on to the next tutorial, and we'll start doing some more exciting things like getting something actually moving around the screen. Okay, see you later. Bye for now.